Hi, my name is Alessandro Gandelosi and that's a video tutorial coming from cgcookie.com for Max Cookie. Today we'll talk about mParticles and mass effects particles used to create some breaking dynamic system with interaction with some additional objects. So our main purpose is to create, something like a road that is broken by a drill, and over it we have also an additional meshes like a toy car. Obviously this setup is just a simple rough setup, and it's nice to introduce to some technique to create some dynamic breaking with mParticles. In the future we'll prepare, but really soon, a new tutorial to see more in depth also how to have more complex breaking, adding details, adding particles, secondary dynamics and debris. So let's start with the first part as a free tutorial, and then we'll move to a second step with a more complex setup on a new citizen tutorial. So let's start to prepare the scene. So let's start to prepare our scene, and the first thing we have to do is to break the mesh apart. And to do something like that, we have a lot of tools like thinking particles or Refire, but we have also some free tools as Voronoi, and you can find it on ScriptSpot website. There is a new version, the 2.5, with a lot of nice new features. You have just to download the file and you can pick it there, the latest version, and then you have to copy the file from the archive for your version. Is a DLM file, and you have to copy this one on the inside the plugins folder of 3ds Max, and then you'll be able to use this free plugin to break the meshes. So let's go in 3ds Max. Our main purpose is to create a road destruction with ParticleFlow to see some workflow we can follow, and some tools in mParticles useful to do effects like the breaking and additional particles. And this is just an introduction to understand how we can tune more complex scene to achieve more complex result. So the first thing we need is to check the unit setup, and obviously we'll work in centimeters. And we need something that will be our road. And let's imagine that maybe we can start with meters, because I'm creating a really big object. Let's say that we have 50 meters. So maybe on the other axis we can have 50 meters there, and maybe we can have let's say 20 meters or maybe 50 meters there, and let's go for 40, and we have maybe just 0.5 meters. So that's our road, and we can go back to the unit setup. We have back centimeters, and there we can have centimeters too. Okay, so let's go back to 40 meters, and let's say 50 centimeters. Okay, now everything is working nice. So this one will be our road. Maybe we can do it a little bit higher, so 1 meter. And we can prepare a really simple material just to simulate the road. So road, it will be maybe a mental ray material. So let's set mental ray as main rendering engine. Okay, and this one will be an arc and design, and inside the diffuse we can use just to speed up the various things, a substance, and we go to load one of the basic texture, and we have something about the asphalt, but we have also road 1 and road 2. Let's try with road 2. Okay, and we can maybe use a better texture size. Let's go with the absolute, with a 2 key texture, and then we can tile, let's say 3 times over this axis. We'll have no blurring. Okay, so that's our main road material, but I like to do something else over the other part. So let's imagine that we are simulating a road material, so maybe we can have a convert to editable poly, and we can select this one, then invert selection, and we can assign a different ID. Let's go with 2, and then there we can create a multi-sub object material, keep old material, set number 2, and the second one is again an arc and design, and this one is roadside, and we need let's say we can do something with a gradient, so we'll use a gradient ramp. But before we have to go to check something there, we have the reflection. We need a really low reflectivity with a really low glossiness. Okay, the material is really simple. I'm not taking care about it actually. We'll have no reflectivity on the side, and this map, let's rotate by 90 degrees, and you see that we have the black on the top and the green and the white on the side. So let's imagine that there we have this kind of color, and let's say that there we have a brown color, and there another kind of brown, and maybe we can imagine that we have a dark gray and the same color, right mouse button, and there, paste. So we are just simulating some layers over there. Okay, back to the material. On the first one, it can be visible. So now we have to break this one, and we can use directly the plugin we have just installed. It's a modifier, it's a Voronoi. So you see, it is really simple. We have just to say, for example, how many chunks we like, and you see that then you have the possibility to control, for example, the scaling of the fragmentation, and rotate the fragmentation. So you see you have the possibility to control the scaling, and that's really nice because it is a really real-time manager for this kind of effects. So let's imagine, for example, that we like to have more fragments, let's say maybe 200. Okay, so you see a lot of fragments, and we'll try to fragmentate maybe just a part, something like that there, and you have the possibility to specify a name, so we can call it fragment, and we can create a new layer and we can call it fragments. You know, there we have the mapping for the various part, let's say with a box mapping, and you see there we have the possibility to scale the fragments. We have a box mode that is really fast, and we have the possibility to decide the gasp. So the gasp is the space between pieces. So you see it can be more or less. And we can try to have really low value just to have no compenetration. So let's say maybe 1.5. So it is really low. And other things, we have nothing so special. So maybe we can stay with this configuration. Let's say, yes, let's save. And then we can say detach all. Let's go in the layer. And you see that now we have this layer. And if we add this one, we have the fragments. So these are the fragments, and every single mesh has the right naming. Okay. Let's hide there. Let's pick this one. And this one can be set to off. And we can create another layer. Sorry. Okay. Road. Set to active the first one. Hide this one. And set back to visible the fragments. So now we have the road with fragments. If you like, you can create something more complex, like for example picking some stuff from there. We can see with the edges faces. You can decide to pick, for example, another pieces there, and decide to use again the Voronoi. And then you see you'll be able to add more debris, and it will be nice if you like. And if you like, we can do it. So let's imagine to call it little. Let's call it this one, little. And we can, for example, create more pieces there and there. So you can pick various tools there and create little debris. To speed up the setup, we'll try to avoid all the other fragments, and we'll try to use just the preliminary fragments we created. So then we need to have a particle system, and we can pick the particle flow, particle view. And let's scale down the particle view. And let's move there. Okay, so we need to create a new particle system. You can press the right mouse button over the workspace there, new, and you have particle system. And let's start with a particle mParticle flow. We can go to check what we have inside the scene, and you see that actually we have nothing. Let's go there in the selection, and you have the bird grid, and it is really little. So what happened actually is, you see, to have these particles, dynamic particles falling down. Obviously, we don't need something like that. We need something more complex. So let's imagine also to have something like a box, just to simulate a mesh over there, for example. And let's imagine to have something more like a sphere also there. Okay, or maybe there. So let's pick the particles. Back in the particle view, so we need to select the particle, let's set to a 2 viewport. So this one will be a perspective with a shaded view. Maybe we can go with a realistic. And this one will be an extended Scene Explorer new. So we have all the objects inside. So we were talking about the particles. We can go to select the particles. It is inside the PF engine, PF source. So actually we have just that particles falling, as we said before, because we need something different. We have to say that the fragments are the particles. So we don't need a particle grid, but we need a particle, a bird group. So we need this one, and we have to remove the bird grid, and we have this one. We can rename using the right mouse button. Let's call it PF fragments. Okay. So the bird grid, you see, needs to have some objects. We can pick by list all the fragments. So with the Shift key, we can pick all the fragments. Now we have this particle system made of particles, but let's see what happened. Let's remove the fragments. If you see, we have again some particles moving and going away, so that's something wrong, and that's due to the shape we are using. Actually, the shape is a cube, and in fact it is using a cube. We have to use something else. We have to use the MP shape. So let's go to pick the MP shape and cover the shape there. So you see that now we have the right mesh, and obviously it is exploding, and that's due to some parameters we have there. The first thing we have to say is to use, this one can be removed. We have it since before, so delete. We had the first one. So we have to say to use a collision, a different collision. If we check how it is colliding, you see that it is using the bounding box around the mesh, and obviously we have collision and intercollision at the beginning. So we have to remove and say to use the convex tool. In the convex tool, you see that it's using the right mesh, so the mesh colliding use the mesh topology, and this one is more precise. If we try to simulate, you see that something is moving, and that's not the one we need. And let's do that because maybe there is some interpretation and some collision at the beginning, and everything can be tweaked using the convex tool generation parameters and the shape interpretation tolerance. So obviously something that can be done is to have different threshold and different tolerance for the interpretation. First of all, let's say that we have 300 frames for the animation. If for example we say 003 for the tolerance, you see that we have still the animation there. We can try, for example, to have no thresholds, so we have the perfect shape from there, and you see that it's working. We have absolutely no animation. We can have this basic setup. We can remove the display, and you see that there again back in the bird group we have some possibilities. You see that we have the acquire mapping and acquire material. So actually we are using the material coming from the other step. So for example, if we go to render a really simple preview, you see that we have the road with the right texture. We see the breaking, so the main technique is to, for example, using the simple setup, is to comp the effect later to remove the breaking or to show the breaking step by step. There are more complex possibility to create automatically the breaking just using the some various plugin or additional technique. Let's go in the second material too to remove the visualization of the map. Okay. So we have our basic particles, and I like, for example, to say something because actually you see that we have this particle there, and the particle at the beginning are moving like falling down, and we have some possibility. The first one is to have no force at the beginning. So you know, at the beginning we have the gravity, and if you go to control, let's remove the spin for the moment, so we have no spinning. If we go to select the MP word, the MP word is creating the dynamic word, you see that we have the gravity and we have a collision plane at the ground where we have the grid, so where the z-axis is 0. If we remove this one and we play, you see that they are falling down, and that's not right. So let's go to have again this one, but I like to have no forces at the beginning, and we'll see later how to play with it. Let's imagine that we have our particles higher. You will see the collision because the particles are falling down, and let's see how it works removing the collision plane. If we go back there, you see that the particles are falling, but we have a really nice and interesting tool, and it's the MP switch. You can put the MP switch after the MP word. Let's remove this one. Okay, the MP switch has a lot of interesting tool, and something, for example, is the apply anti-gravity or the turn off simulation. So you can turn to off the simulation or remove the gravity force where you like to remove it. If we apply the anti-gravity, you see that we have no falling down of the particles, but we can decide how much time we like to have no anti-gravity. So we'll see later how to work with it. Let's set to off for the moment. Let's add something interesting. Let's imagine that we have, let's say, maybe a pyramid. And let's go to have, okay, something like that. Let's go in the isolation, convert to the table poly, and I like to pick some vertices to give a different shape to this one. Nothing so complex, just a simple changes. Okay, so you see a simple mesh. Let's call it rotor. Okay, exit from the isolation, and we can imagine that this one is maybe going in this way, and maybe at the beginning stay there, and it is on this place maybe just a little bit lower, and we'll have the animation. It will be not so much fast. It is better to set to off the animation in the particle. So let's say that we have the anti-gravity. Let's remove the realistic, and let's go in the animation, and let's say that maybe in 200 frames we'll have obviously some movement, and it will stay like that. I'm just creating something really simple. So what it's doing now is to growing up and move the stuff. Okay, let's double check. You see that it's moving also there. Okay, perfect. So we have the basic animation for this one. Actually, we have no collision, but to have collision, we have to say that this one is a particle flow collision. To have the collision, we have to say activate. So now in this case, we have the collision, obviously. So to see the collision, we have to say that we have the mParticles collision. And now we can add by list, and we have the rotor. If we go, you see that we have the braking. Obviously, everything is flying away because we have no gravity. So now we have to tune up the various stuff. So back to the first frame, and let's say that we have no anti-gravity. So you see in this case, we have the stuff falling down and breaking over the rotor that is moving, and that's not right. So we have to say that we have no gravity, but maybe just for some frames. And let's go back to the word. We'll have the ground collision, and there apply anti-gravity, maybe just for an interval, let's say about to have no movement, let's say maybe 60. So from 0 to 60 we have no gravity, and then we have gravity. So if we go to simulate, you see that we have no gravity, and then this one is moving and creating the braking. Okay, let's imagine that we like to contain the stuff. So let's try to create from the left a box. Let's say it will be something like a wall. And this one can stay there. And let's call it side. And we'll have another one, and this one will be side 01. This one will be a little bit near. Okay, we have again collision shape, active, and this one is a collision shape and it's active. Back to the particle system, but let's go back to the perspective 2 to see what happened. We can go there and say that we have also collision with the side and side 01. Let's try to see the simulation. Okay. Obviously, in this case, now we have just the braking, we have no movement on the side, you see, and then we have just movement on the side, and that's not right. So we have to stop this area too. And to stop this area, let's imagine that this one and this one, object properties, not renderable, and display as box. Then we, we do maybe a box like this one. Let's make a copy, with the angle snap, and using the shift key at 90°, copy. Let's remove this one to have the possibility to change the shape. It will be shorter, obviously. And this one, we'll have the particle collision 2 set to active. Back there, we add 2 collision, also this one. Let's see if now it works. Okay, we have the braking, and we have the stop, and then you see, obviously, we have too much energy, and you see that it's moving and moving. So something that can be done to have a better quality, you can go in the particle world, MP world, and you can decide to have some more subframe factor. You can, for example, use a higher factor to have a more precise calculation, or if you like, you can directly set to variable, and it will be adjust depending on the complexity of the animation. So you see, in this case, we have this kind of result, and that's really not bad. Okay, let's save. Then let's imagine that you like to have some objects over the road, for example a car or something else. You have just to set this object as particles to be simulated. So let's go to the zoom just a little bit. This one should stay just a little bit higher, and this one a little bit lower. And then we have to select again the particles, and we have to add in the particles group also this one and this one. Now we can pick this object, put over a layer, let's say additional meshes, set to height, and there in the build group we have update. So now we have the meshes over, and if we go to simulate, you see that we have the braking. We have just to solve. We have some kind of problem actually with the sphere, so just to speed up, we remove the sphere. Okay, so we have to update. Okay, so that's our actual simulation, as you see. And maybe just to be a little bit more precise, let's go in the additional meshes. We erase this one, and let's go in the isolation, and we can create some cylinder. Okay, rotate by 90° and move it. Okay, something obviously. Okay, and then let's do some copy also there. Okay, perfect. Let's pick this one, convert to editable poly, and we can attach the other part. So attach. Okay, nice. Back to the particle system. and we have also sorry, let's say to update the particles. Okay, we go to hide the additional meshes, and let's see if something is going to create issue. We have some interpretation at the beginning, I think. So back with all particles visible. Let's remove just for a moment this one and update. This one will be car. Okay, it is inside. Okay, so again add this one, update, and set to hide. Let's go back there and let's see if now it works. Okay, perfect. Okay, back to the particle and back to the animation there. So you can see that we have the braking, and then the car is moving, and then we have the rotor going up. So that's just a basic setup, but another interesting thing we can do is to have some particle intercollision. So what I mean, we can have, for example, let's see there, but this one will be done just to understand what we can do. Let's say that the particles when spawn, when I have the collision, will have again pace distanced the dynamic. So that means that after the collision between the object, the particles continue to have the normal dynamic. Okay, and we say to use geometry, and then we say that when we have the collision, the objects will spawn. So let's set okay. In this case, you see that we have a spawning event, and let's use then a display. Sorry, we have it. And let's see what happened. In this case, you see that the particles are colliding, but we have to, let's set track update particle count, so we can see if the particles are moving. Okay, we have to set this one, test 2 if they are colliding. Okay, now we can see. Okay, you see that actually it is just creating some spawning particles from death meshes. But let's say that the spawn, as for example, let's say maybe just a shape, so we can have. Okay, so we can assign a shape to this one to add some secondary meshes during the explosion. If we have this one, you can see that we have, you see the braking, and then we have those particles. Let's say that we have geometry, and you see that we have some sides. Let's go for 60. Okay, and let's give a different color. Let's say, for example, violet. So it is creating some particles, and let's say that we use maybe let's say the decatur. Okay, and we use the right scale. with a variation of 75%. And let's say that the scaling will be 20%. Okay, so we have little objects. Let's say that we have once, and let's say that all are spawnable, and we have maybe 15 offsprings with a variation of 35%, so we have more or less particles, and we have 75% or maybe 100% with 50% of variation, and we have the divergence. So let's see what happened. You see, we have in a few the collision. Okay, we have too much problems now, and that's we lost the connection. So again, let's use the connection. Okay, so you see that we have this kind of particles, and then let's say that we have a gravity, so we use partially the mParticles and partially the normal particles. So there we can set, for example, a force, and the force will be the gravity. Let's see what happened. Okay, it's too much. Let's say maybe 20%. So let's go to the braking. You see that the particles are going away as launched, but maybe we have to go at 100%. So let's see. Okay. It is obviously a really simple way to create let's say 60.5%, and the variation is 75 with 75% of variation. And let's say that we have a delete. Or maybe it's not a problem to have a delete. Okay, so let's go to check. We have this kind of effect. You see, we have this collision and then some braking. Obviously, we have a lot of braking there on the bottom, but it's just, this one is just to introduce you to the possibility to have some additional meshes growing. So if we go there and we go, for example, at the frame, let's save and let's render. Let's do something really simple. Okay, let's go back to the fragments there, because actually I'd like just to have this one as an introduction to the possibility to create some more particles, but we can set to off, so we should be able, sorry, we'll have no spawning. Okay, and we have to do something to the additional meshes there. I mean, on this one, the car, let's give it just maybe an arc and design, and we'll go for something really simple. So let's go in the this material, we'll have ID set to 2 and this one will be set to 1. Okay, nice. So we'll have a car material, and this one will be a multi-sub objects. Okay, keep old, it's not a problem. Set number to 2, assign, and the first one will be a simple car paint. Let's go for the car paint, and we'll have there maybe just a dark arc design. So let's go for a really dark gray with no reflectivity. Okay, so hide this layer and back to the particles, and let's say in the big group to update. Okay, if you go to make a test render, you see that we have this one. We can put maybe just a skylight, let's say standard, and we have skylight, and let's see what we have in rendering. Okay, you see a really simple render just to see how it looks. Nice. So let's go to see this one in this way, and let's do a preview at 900 and 400. So obviously there is simple. Then we can go forward. Sorry, sometimes it has problem. Okay, it is crashing. So let's go to check the animation. Okay, and let's see this frame, for example. Okay, so you see, obviously that's just a really simple setup, and we are using really little pieces, and it's really simple, really rough. We have no additional particles, we have no additional collision, so it is just an introduction to understand how we can manage the braking system using particle flow. So starting from this point, we can prepare in the future a new tutorial where we try to create a really complex setup about braking, maybe with more objects over, with more particles and some more interaction. So we'll prepare it really soon. But actually it was nice to understand how we can play with a really simple particle flow setup to create some dynamics. So let's save the project, and for the moment that's all, and I hope to be back with you for a new tutorial on CG Cookie really soon. Bye.